Good morning, Engineer Joel Kapala and classmates. My name is Jonas Dator, and my co-reporter is Ryan Jason Angulo, and our report is about Rule number 3, Permits and Inspection. Section 301, Building Permits. No person, firm, or corporation, including any agency or instrumentally of the government, shall construct, alter, repair, convert, use, occupy, move, demolish, and add any building or structure or any portion thereof or cause the same to be done without first obtaining a building permit. Therefore, from the building official assigned in the place where the subject building structure is located or to be done, the prescribed application for building permit form or NBC form B01 shall be used by all applicants. Number 2. Permits supplementary to a building permit shall be applied for and issued by a building official. These include ancillary and the accessory permits. A. Auxiliary permit. B. Accessory permits. Number 3. Exception for building permits. A building permit shall not be required for the following minor construction and repair, provided this shall not violate any provision of the code and this ARR. ABC. A is minor construction, B is repair works. Section 302, Application for Permits. Any person desiring to obtain a building permit and any auxiliary or accessory permit together with a building permit shall file applications therefore on the prescribed application form. 5 sets of survey plans, design plans, specification, and other documents prepared, signed, and sealed over the printed names of the duly licensed and registered professional. A. Geodetic engineer in case of lot survey plans. B. Architect in case of architectural documents. Civil engineer in case of civil or structural documents. Professional electrical engineer in case of electrical documents. Professional mechanical engineer in case of mechanical documents. Sanitary engineer in case of sanitary documents. Master plumber in case of plumbing document. Electronics engineer in case of electronic documents. Number 4, architectural documents. Architectural plan or drawing. Vicinity map, location plan within 2-kilometer radius for commercial, industrial, and institutional complex, and within half-kilometer radius for residential building at any convenient scale showing prominent landmark or major thoroughfares for easy reference. B. Architectural interiors or design plan and specific location of all accessibility facilities of scale of at least 1:100. D. Detailed and design of all such accessibility facilities outside and around building structure, including parking areas and their safety requirements, all at scale of 1:50 or any convenient scale. Letter E. Fire safety documents. And number 5, civil or structural documents. A. Site development plan. B. Structural plan. C. Structural analysis and design for all buildings or structure except for one story and single detached building or structure with a total area of 20 square meter or less. D. Boring and load test. E. Seismic analysis. F. Other related documents. 6. Electrical documents. 7. Mechanical documents. 8. Sanitary documents. 9. Plumbing documents. 10. Electronic. 11. Geodetic. 12. Clearance from the agencies. So let's proceed to section 303, processing of building permits. The flow of processing building permit shall follow the procedures shown. 1. Building permit application, line and grade verification, architectural, civil structural, electrical, mechanical, sanitary, plumbing, electronics, fire requirements. Now, Section 304, issuance of building permit. 1. When the application for building permit, the plans and specification submitted herewith conform to the requirements of the code and XIII, the building official should within 15 days from payment of the required fees by the applicant issue the building permit applied for. Section 305, validity of building permit. The issuance of a building permit shall not be construed as approval or authorization to the permit to disregard or violate any of the provision of the code. Section 306, non-issuance, suspension, or revocation of the building permit. The building official may order, cause the non-issuance, suspend, or revocation of the building permit on any or all of the following reasons or ground. First, error found in the plans and specification. 2. Incorrect or inaccurate data or information supplied. Non-compliance with the provision of the code or any rules and regulations. So let's proceed to Section 307. Appeal. Within 15 days from the date of receipt of advice of non-issuance, suspend, or revocation of permit, the applicant or permittee may file an appeal with the Secretary, who shall render his decision within 15 days from date of receipt of notice of appeal. The decision of the Secretary shall be final, subject only to review by the Office of the President. Section 308, inspection and supervision of work. First, the owner of the building who issued or granted a building permit under the code shall engage the service of a duly licensed architect or civil engineer to undertake the full-time inspection and supervision of the construction work. So and let's proceed to 309, certificate of occupancy. The UBO undertakes the final inspection, verification, or review of the building structure based on the certificate of completion, construction logbook, building inspection sheet, original as-built plans and specification, as the case may be, and specification on the prescribed standard form according to the requirements set for under Section 303. Let's proceed to rule number 5, requirement of fire zone. Section 501, fire zone defined. Fire zone are areas within which only certain types of building or structure are permitted to be constructed based on their use or occupancy, type of construction, and resistance to fire. Section 502, buildings located in more than one fire zone. A building structure or structure which is located partly in one fire zone and partly in another shall be considered to be in the more highly restrictive fire zone when more than 1/3 of its total floor area is located in such zone. So let's proceed. 503, move buildings. First, in any building or structure moved within or into any fire zone shall be made to comply with all the requirements for buildings or structure in that fire zone. Let's proceed. 504, temporary buildings or structure. First, temporary building such as reviewing stand and other miscellaneous structures conforming to the required of the code, and shed, canopies, and fence used for the protection of the public around in conjunction with construction work may be erected in the fire zone by special permit from the building official for a limited period of time, and such buildings or structures shall be completely removed upon the expiration of the time limit stated in such permits. Section 506. Restriction on existing buildings. First, existing buildings or structure in fire zone that do not comply with the requirements for a new building erected therein shall not hereafter be enlarged, altered, remolded, repaired, or moved except as follows. A. Such building is entirely demolished. B. Such building is to be moved outside the limit of the more highly restricted fire zone to a zone where a building meets a minimum standard. Section 507. Designation of fire zone. The legislative body of the LGU may enact or ordinance for the purpose of designating fire zone based on parameter and guidelines set forth in this section. So let's proceed. Rule 6. Fire resistive requirement in construction. Section 601. Fire resistive rating defined. Fire resistive rating means the degree to which a material can withstand fire as determined by generally recognized and accepted testing methods. Section 602. Fire resistive time period rating. Fire resistive time period rating is the length of time a material can withstand being burned, which may be 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, etc. Section 603. Fire resistive standard. All material of construction and type of material and assemblies or combination thereof shall conform to the following fire resistive ratings. So here's the figure. So let's proceed. Section 604. Fire resistive regulation. The Secretary shall prescribe the standard and promulgate rules and regulations on the testing of construction materials for flame spread characteristics, tests on the fire damage, fire tests of building construction and materials, door assemblies and tin-clad fire doors and windows assemblies, the installation of the fire doors and windows and smoke and fire detector for fire protective signaling system, application and use of control interior finish, fire resistive protection for structural member, fire resistive walls and partitions, fire resistive floor or roof ceiling, fire resistive assemblies for protection of openings and fire retardant roof coverings.
Good morning, Sir Joel Kapala, and to my classmates. I will report about Rule 8, Light and Ventilation, and Rule 13, Electrical and Mechanical Regulations. For Rule 8, Light and Ventilation, Section 1, General Requirement of Light and Ventilation. All buildings shall face a street or public alley or a private street which has been duly approved. Sight of the room and windows shall meet the requirements of this rule and it should not be altered. For Section 802, Measurement of Site Occupancy. The measurement of site occupancy or lot occupancy shall be taken at the ground level and shall be exclusive of courts, yards, and light wells. Courts, yards, and light wells should be measured clear of all projections from the walls enclosing such wells or yards with the exception of roof leaders, wall copings, sills, or stills fire escapes not exceeding 1.2 meters in width. For Section 803, percentage of site occupancy. Percentage of site occupancy or PSO shall be taken at the ground level. TOSL or total open spaces within lot consists of ISA or impervious surface area and USA or unpaved surface area. The table illustrates the manner in determining the maximum allowable PSO, which is PSO is percentage of site occupancy, ISA, and also the minimum USA and the total space within lot. Structures use or land occupancy like residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, cultural, utility, transportation, services, sidewalks are ready to RRO or road right of way, parks and recreational spaces, planned unit development, and cemetery has different percentage of PSO, ISA, and USA depending of land use. As shown in the table, while TOSL or total open spaces is just the total of ISA and USA. Now for Section 804, site and dimensions of courts. Minimum sizes of courts and yards and their list dimensions shall be governed by the type of constructions. The minimum horizontal dimensions of courts and yards shall not be less than 2 meters, and all inner courts shall be connected to a yard, and with a minimum width of 1.2 meters. Open spaces can be located anywhere provided that maximum light and ventilation is met. Table 8.2 shows the measurement of the minimum setbacks of residential buildings or structures. Whereas we can see in the table 8.2 that R1, R2, and R3, R4, and R5 are different types of residential use, and its yards measurement for R1 is 4.5 meters, 2 meters, and 2 meters for front, side, and rear sides respectively. You can see as well the measurement for R2, R3, and R4, and R5 in the table. Setbacks for commercial, industrial, institutional, and recreational building is depending on the road right of way width in meters. Every court shall have a width of not less than 2 meters for one or two story building or more than 2 story in height. The minimum width of the rear sides of court shall be increased by 300 millimeters for each additional story up to 14 story. In case of conflict in the provision on lighting and ventilation under this rule, the more stringent restriction must prevail. For Section 805, ceiling heights. For habitable rooms, ceiling heights must not be less than 2.4 meters measured from floor to the ceiling. For buildings of more than 1 story building, the minimum ceiling height of the first story shall be 2.7 meters, and for the second story is 2.4 meters, and the succeeding stories have minimum height of 2.1 meters. Mezzanine floor, or it is the floor that is between the first floor and the second floor, is should have a ceiling of not less than 1.8 meters. For Section 806, sizes and dimensions of rooms. Minimum sizes of rooms and their least horizontal dimension shall be as follows. For A, rooms for human habitation, 6 square meters with at least dimensions of 2 meters. For kitchen, 3 square meters with a least dimension of 1.5 meters. And for bath and toilet, 1.2 square meters with a least dimensions of 900 millimeters. Section 807, air space requirement is determining the size of rooms. Minimum air space shall be provided as follows. School rooms, 3 cubic meters with 1 square meters of floor area per person. Workshop, factories, and offices, 12 cubic meters of airspace per person. And habitable rooms, 14 cubic meters of airspace per person. Section 808. Windows openings. Room intended for any use not provided with artificial ventilation system shall be provided with a window or windows with a total free area openings equal to at least 10% of the floor. Toilet and bathrooms, laundry rooms, and similar rooms shall be provided with window or windows with an area not less than 1/20th of the floor area of such rooms, provided that such opening shall not be less than 240 square millimeters. Such windows or windows shall open directly to a courtyard, public street or alley, or open watercourse. Required windows may open into a roof porch, where the porch abuts a courtyard, public street or alley, or open watercourse and other public open spaces. Has ceiling height of not less than 2.7 meters. Has one of the longer sides at least 65% open and unobstructed. Eaves, canopies, awning, or media agua over required windows shall not be less than 750 millimeters from the side and the rear property lines. There shall be absolutely no openings on, at, within, through all types of abutments, such as firewalls, erected along property lines excepted for permitted vent wells. This rule strictly applies to all new existing buildings. For Section 809, vent shafts. Ventilation shall be horizontal cross-sectional area of not less than 1 square meters. No vent shaft shall have its least dimension less than 600 millimeters, while air duct shall open to a street or courts by horizontal duct or intake. Such duct or intake shall have a minimum obstructed cross-sectional area not less than 0.39 square meters with a minimum dimension of 300 millimeters. For Section 810, ventilation of skylight. Ventilation of skylight shall have a glass area not less than that required for the windows that are replaced. They shall be equipped with movable slashes or louvers with a aggregated net-free area not less than the parts in the replaced window that can be opened, or else provided artificial ventilation or equivalent effectiveness. Or Section 811, artificial ventilation, states that rooms or space housings, industrial or heating equipment shall be provided with artificial means of ventilation to prevent excessive accumulation of hot and polluted air. Whenever artificial ventilation is required, the equipment shall be designed and constructed to meet the following minimum requirements in changes. For rooms entirely above grade and used for office, clerical, or administrative purposes, aura stores, sales room, restaurant, markets, factoring workshop, or machinery rooms, not less than 3 changes of air per hour shall be provided. For auditorium and other rooms used for assembly purposes with seat or other accommodators, not less than 0.03 cubic meters of air per minute shall be supplied for each person. For rooms entirely above grade and used as bakeries, hotel or restaurant kitchens, laundries other than accessory to dwellings, and boiler rooms, not less than 10 changes of air per hour shall be provided. For wards and dormitories for institutional buildings, not less than 0.45 cubic meters of air per minute shall be supplied for each person accommodated. For other rooms or spaces not specifically covered under this section of the Code, applicable provisions of the Philippine Mechanical Code shall be followed. Rule 13, Electrical and Mechanical Regulators. Section 1301, Electrical Regulations. All electrical systems, equipments, and installation mentioned in the Code shall conform to the provisions at the PEC Part 1 and Part 2 as adopted by the Board of Electrical and pursuant to RA 7920, otherwise known as the Philippine Electrical Engineering Law. 1. Over service entrance. It is required to supply power source including transformers, poles, and supporting structures. 2. Attachment on the clearance from buildings. It covers power lines and cables, transformers. It is approved by professional electrical engineering. 3. Open supply conductors attached to buildings. Permanent attachment of open supply conductors to any class of buildings is necessary and should be guarded or made inaccessible if conductors carry 300 volts or more. 4. Conductors passing by over buildings, unguarded or accessible. Supply conductors with voltage excess of 300 volts either beside or over building should meet the requirement of its horizontal and vertical clearances, as shown in the table. Clearance of service drops. It should not be readily accessible when not in excess of 600 volts. It should have a clearance of 2.5 meters from high points of the roof, 3 meters clearance from ground or any platform, 1 meter horizontal clearance from windows, doors, porches, and fire escapes. For 6. Wiring methods. Abandoned lines shall be removed and line equipment shall be free from any attachments. Transformers rated 15 kV shall be installed inside a transformer's vault. Also, it should be guarded. For 8. Provision for transformer vault. It should be constructed accordance with PEC Part 1. For 9. Capacitor. Also, installation of capacitor in hazardous location shall comply as prescribed in PEC Part 1 or Philippine Electrical Code Part 1. For 10. Emergency power system shall be provided electric power for safety or life when electric power is interrupted and shall be adequately capacity for the person of the emergency load. Electrical room should have an adequate space or area shall be provided at loads where panel boards, breakers, switch gears, and other electrical equipment are installed. For 12. Service equipment should have an adequate space and located in readily accessible area. For metering facilities, metering volt required for primary service shall be provided. Ventilation and metering space shall be provided for single or multi-metering. Now for section 1302 mechanical regulations. For 1. All mechanical system equipment and installation mentioned in the code shall conform to the provision of the Philippine Mechanical Code as adopted by the Board of Mechanical Engineering pursuant to RA 8495 as amended, otherwise known as the Philippine Mechanical Engineering Law. 12. Number 2. Guarding of moving and dangerous parts. All prime mover machines and machine parts should be guarded to protect any person against accidental contact with dangerous moving parts. For cranes should have an adequate means like ladders, stairs, or platforms having revolving cabs to permit the operator to enter or leave the crane to ground safely. Temporary crane may be allowed to operate provided that there is a flagman. Hoist. Each hoist shall have its rated load legibly marked. Electric hoist motor shall be provided electrically or mechanically operated brake. Elevators shall be installed in all private and public buildings for public use accessible to disabled person. It should be provided with full free safety devices, overload switch, and reverse polarity relay. For escalators, angle of inclination of an escalator shall not exceed 30 degrees from the horizontal. Boilers and pressure vessels. Boilers may be located inside buildings provided it is made of the of fire-resistive materials in case it can be located outside of the building at a 3 meters distance from the outside wall. Two check valves shall be provided between any feed pump and the boiler, and it should be at least one safely value. Each boiler shall have a steam gauge. For 8, refrigeration and air conditioning. Water from evaporators, condensers, and other machinery shall be properly collected into a drainage system. Ducts shall be constructed of non-combustible materials, and its ducts pass through walls. The space around it should be seated with fire-resistant materials. Not more than 140 kilograms of refrigerant in approved containers shall be stored in the machine rooms at any given time. In refrigerating system containing more than 9 kilograms, stop valve shall be installed. Window type air conditioners shall be provided with drainage pipe and exhaust ducts. Water pump for buildings or structures. Installation of pumping equipment to supply buildings directly from existing water supply is not allowed. A cistern must be used before installing a pumping equipment. Piping for fuel, gas, and steam. Piping shall run parallel as much as possible into building walls. Group piping shall be supported on racks and 100 mm in diameter above shall be flanked. Identification of piping by color and tag shall be as follows as seen in the table.